Hello, it's Christy Gray, your newest hype girl and astrologer. Welcome to the Cosmic Hotline.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Cosmic Hotline. This week, it's our cosmic deep dive, and I'm taking you on a journey, a celestial journey of sorts. And the real question is, where should you begin with astrology? It was a psychic that first introduced me to astrology. And I'm not talking reading your horoscope in the back of a magazine or downloading the CoStar app type of astrology. I'm talking natal chart astrology, but initially it was in a form I'd never even seen before. I had been recommended to go and see this psychic by the Sephora general manager at the time. I just moved to Sydney and all of my colleagues had been to see her, and I hadn't actually seen a psychic in years. When I was looking for clarity and direction in my 20s, I visited a string of psychics. And I suppose I was essentially looking for answers. But one of the first things that this particular psychic did was she asked for my date of birth and she proceeded to pull out something that resembled a textbook. Now, this textbook, it was full of symbols and numbers, and it was something I knew nothing about. Today, I know what this book is because I own one, but I had no idea what it was back then. The words she spoke, I'll never forget. Ooh, you're really fiery. I really don't know if she thought that was a good thing or a bad thing. And I can't even remember what she told me in this particular reading, but I'll never forget those words. For the first time in a long time, I was curious and I wanted to know what fiery really meant. So this meant I graduated quickly from reading my horoscope to buying my very first natal chart astrology book. And it was The Signs by Carolyn Faulkner. You could say the wheels were well and truly set in motion. I spent the next 3 years in full self-directed learning immersion. I read anything I could get my hands on in the spiritual world because I was just so curious to learn more. But as you babes know, I love blending the metaphysical with the practical because I believe you can't have one without the other. So in my spare time, I'm in full spirituality world immersion. And then outside of that, I'm gaining qualifications through tertiary studies. Essentially, what I was trying to do at this time in my life is find meaning and purpose. So through a series of serendipitous events, which I look at them as serendipitous now, they definitely weren't like that at the time because it was a Saturn year and I felt like I was being forced to reevaluate my entire life. I moved back to the Gold Coast and lo and behold, not long after I moved back there, I found myself sitting outside an award-winning astrologer's house, which was only a suburb away from my place, and you could say the rest is history. But you might be thinking, like, what even prompted me to get to that place? Funnily enough, it was the same psychic that told me I was fiery that prompted me to look at something new to study. I saw the psychic 3 times over 3 years, and I honestly thought I might die when she told me I'd need to study something else because I felt like I'd been studying for the last decade. But after that first day of astrology immersion, guess what? I never needed to visit that psychic again. So you might be thinking, like, what's the point to all of this? Well, I've been in your place once. Eager to learn more about astrology, but unsure of where to begin and what to focus on and what kind of astrologer to believe. I promise you, I don't have all the answers because I'm always learning too. But what I do know is I learn a few tips from that very first astrology session and everything else along the way. As I sat with my mentor, Narelle, on that very first day, my whole entire world cracked open. I had this visceral reaction and I instantly knew I was right where I needed to be. That's my first tip with astrology. Be guided in the direction you feel pulled towards. I left that first 2-hour session forever transformed and I was already counting down to my next session in 2 weeks' time. My head also thought that it might explode with all of this new information. Astrology was and is like a drug where you can find yourself wanting more. Which brings me to tip number 2. There's no end goal with exploring the stars. You'll never find out everything there is to know. Just like the galaxy is infinite, so is the study of the stars. So pace yourself, baby. You have time. So as I tried to wrap my head around this first celestial experience, I kept going back to the notes I wrote at that very first session. These are the same notes I come back to time and time again. And the insights I learned on that day, I'm sharing with you in a podcast version kind of way. And they have everything to do with the planets and significant celestial bodies. If you can gain an understanding of the planets, you can up-level what you know about the zodiac signs and houses. The other super cool thing is the planets are related to gods and goddesses in Greek mythology. If you love a good story like I do, and storytelling helps you to learn and retain information, I highly recommend you doing a Google search and going down a rabbit hole because every planet is related to a story in Greek mythology. I wish I could take you on a journey of all of these today, but we'd be here for too long. But instead, I'm going to share with you insights into each of the luminaries, inner and outer planets, my favorite asteroid, and a celestial point you'll be well and truly across, which is your ascendant, aka your rising sign. But this isn't an Astrology 101 class. Instead, I want you to be listening for the area of your life you'd love to grow and up-level in. If you don't know what that is, take a moment to think about it now. When you hear me highlight that area of your life that's in the spotlight, and what part of astrology it relates to, start there. Remember my first tip before, be guided by what you feel pulled towards. And here's tip number 4. Your natal chart is unique to you, and there's never going to be another one replicated. So rather than follow a strategy or approach astrology like a box that needs ticking off your list, instead allow yourself to be guided. There's no user manual for you, and astrology is no different. Now, a quick note before we move on. I am open to traditional astrology as you can't appreciate astrology today without knowing where it came from. I do lean towards modern astrology because we're so lucky to discover new things every single day, and so I must be open to both. I'm popping in with a quick public service announcement, and that is the most important part of the Cosmic Hotline is you. Have an astrology question you need answered? Nothing is off limits. Whether it's a question about your natal chart, the 411 on Mercury retrograde, or what is the significance of a particular transit or activation. Submit your question today with no strings attached, or select the option to have your question answered live, just like an astrology session I'd have with a client. Text or call 043 17 Venus or submit your question via the show notes below. Let's start with your big 3 in astrology. And your big 3 are known as your primary archetypes, which is your sun, your moon, and your ascendant. Think of your sun sign, which is your star sign, like the CEO of you. It's representative of your identity, your soul's journey, and your purpose. If you can lean into or work towards the high vibrational qualities of your sun sign, then essentially you're stepping into the vibration of your higher self. What you can look for is look for the traits that are more challenging for your sun sign. And they are really good pre-markers of when you're out of alignment. The other tip I have for your sun sign is that if you're ever feeling like out of equilibrium or things are off balance, look towards your sun sign, what zodiac sign it's in, and then also what house it's in, and that will give you insight as to how can you step back into alignment. Now, the sun rules Leo, which is why our Leos love to be front and center, and the sun is also associated with the 5th house in astrology. So if you're struggling to make a decision on the direction that you need to take, or you're lacking a sense of meaning and purpose, and you're looking for ways to become more fulfilled, then look towards your sun sign. Now, your moon in astrology, your moon is like your HR department. Your moon represents your emotions, it's your inner world, and it's your instincts. The moon also is a great indicator of how you look to meet your emotional needs. Do you look externally for a thing or a person to help you to gain a sense of fulfillment? Or are you somebody that is more self sufficient and then looks for ways that you can meet your own emotional needs and build your resilience? The moon rules Cancer, and I love our Cancerians because of the fact that their energy or emotions is always in ebb and flow, which is no different than the moon because the moon shifts into a new zodiac sign every 2.5 days. So if you have Cancer anywhere in your big three in astrology, it's really important that you trust and honor what you need from moment to moment or day to day. Having a strategy or a cookie cutter approach is not going to be conducive to you as a person. The moon is also associated with house number 4. Now, your ascendant is like the customer service of you. It's related to first impressions, it's how others see you, and it is a source of exhilaration. Because the ascendant is so integral in traditional astrology, that's why when you go to read your horoscope, an astrologer will say, read your sun sign or your ascendant, because both placements are taken into consideration. But because your ascendant or rising sign is associated with purpose and joy, similar to your sun sign, if something's feeling out of alignment in your life, you can look towards your ascendant for a greater level of depth or understanding of how you can get back into alignment. Now, the ascendant isn't associated with a particular sign because it's one of the angles. And if you've listened to episode 2, you'll be well and truly across this. Plus, you'll always find it on the first house cusp. Let's dive over to the inner planets. And the inner planets are Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Mercury is your intellect, it's your communication style, it's related to memory. I always say our Mercury is great because we can look towards it as to how we learn and synthesize information. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo, so there's no surprises there while I'm completely obsessed with this planet. But if you're having problems with expressing yourself, communication within a relationship, look towards your Mercury placement, or even look at your partner's or a child's or a friend's, as that helps you to gain a greater understanding, which I believe is like the cornerstone of a relationship. I say this almost every single day in an astrology session, is that when somebody is asking me about natal chart synastry or relationships, normally one of the questions does revolve around like, if this person is my soulmate and they're meant to be. I think it's so fun that you can Google compatibility in astrology, but at the end of the day, if you've got two people willing to meet halfway and they are open to grow and expand in the relationship, most importantly, communicate effectively, which is being seen, heard, understood. It's about being able to find middle ground. That's the secret sauce, baby. Mercury is related to the 3rd house and also the 6th because it rules Virgo, but I'm going to talk more about the 6th house in a moment. The planet Venus is related to aesthetics, pleasure, and money. Because Venus is the divine feminine, it's all about how we receive love. It rules both Taurus and Libra. This planet represents values, and it can be a really great indicator of how you reignite romance within a relationship. Or that could even be fun and playfulness within a friendship. Do you require more spontaneity because it's in the sign of Sagittarius? Or are you somebody that prefers to do nice things for the people in your life because you have Venus in Virgo? If you're struggling to get what you want from your loved one, I would definitely recommend looking at this planet. The planet Venus is also associated with house number 2 and house number 7. Which brings me to the planet Mars. And Mars represents the masculine. It represents energy, desire, and action. It rules Aries and it's associated with house number 1. So there's no surprises when we talk about the planet Mars. It's all about our energy output. If you have an endless stream of optimism and energy, well, maybe you have Mars in Leo. or if you find that your energy comes in surges and it's really unpredictable and it's something that you have to honor and make space for, well, you might even have Mars in Pisces. This planet won't only give you insight in how you manage your energy, but also how you expend it. Let's move on to the outer planets. So the outer planets are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, the dwarf planet Pluto, and I have a wild card for you, which isn't a planet, it's an asteroid, which is Chiron. And I'm sure if you've been here for a while now that it is my favorite asteroid. Jupiter is the planet of growth, abundance, and expansion. It rules Sagittarius and it's associated with the ninth house. If you're craving learning something new or wanting to experience everything that life has to offer, well, Jupiter may have some clues worth unlocking. It also gives us insight into what's our relationship like with spirituality and religion, and what area of our life is a place of expansion, and how can we better tap into abundance. For example, I have Jupiter in the fourth house. The fourth house is ruled by the moon and it's related to home and family. It's got those ties to the Cancerian energy I shared with you in the beginning. And because Jupiter is in my fourth house, is my home is a place of expansion. I need to live near water because I find peace and stability there. I do my best learning, growing, expanding in the home environment, and my home always looks a certain way. Not just because I have 3 planets in Virgo, but because it is such an important piece of my puzzle. As much as I love being out in the world and wanting to escape reality sometimes, is home is definitely my haven. Which brings me to the planet Saturn, which has got an entirely different spin. Saturn represents perseverance, discipline, and karma. It's the ruler of Capricorn, which is why our Capricorn babes are so relentless, working towards whatever they're setting out to achieve and getting to the top of their mountain. It's associated with house number 10, and most people know about the 7-year Saturn activations and also Saturn return. Saturn gives us insight as to how we deal with responsibility or respond to responsibility, and it's related to career. So, where do we feel a sense of commitment to the work that we do? You might have Saturn in Scorpio, which does really point to having an intense commitment to your work. You also might find things harder to let go so that you can move forward. And then, depending on the house placement, it will give you an extra layer of insight. We then have Uranus, and Uranus represents individuality, rebellion, and revolution. It rules Aquarius and it's associated with house number 11. Uranus prompts us to think bigger. It helps us to dream big in regards to what are our goals, hopes, wishes, and dreams. There's even ties to technology, humanity here, and also evolution. Uranus forces us to get out of our own way. Do you have confidence to go after what you want? Or when somebody else tries to give you an opinion, if you ask for it, but you're completely against it and you're almost frustrated that they didn't give you what you wanted to know or hear, well, then Uranus might have something to do with it. If you're looking to break free in any area of your life, then I definitely look towards the planet Uranus. Next, we have Neptune. Neptune represents manifestation, spirituality, and dreams. It rules Pisces and it's associated with house number 12. Neptune can be a bit of a wild card. And the reason I say this is because this is where our manifestation and ties to cosmic consciousness come from. Neptune rules dreams, imagination, our psychic abilities. But in saying that, it also rules boundaries, disillusion, and escapism. So, as much as it's great to tap into our imagination sometimes, it's like, when are we hitting continue watching on Netflix too many times? Or when are we sticking our head in the sand because we don't want to deal with a situation? Neptune can give you a lot of insight into this. For example, when I see Neptune in the first house, somebody might have, obviously depending on other things in the natal chart, a skewed sense of reality on their identity. They might be doing a really good job in their life, but they'll question or second guess themselves. On the flip side, when I see some people that have Neptune in the seventh house rules partnerships, is that this person may be out there looking or waiting for their Prince Charming without actually taking any action. Or even if they have a really epic human being in front of them, they might still be looking towards the future because the grass could be greener. So even though Neptune helps us to romanticize our life, we need to make sure we're not seeing the world with rose-colored glasses. Pluto is the planet of transformation, endings, and rebirth. It rules Scorpio and it's associated with the 8th house. Pluto is a really great indicator in a natal chart as to what area of your life are you feeling empowered or disempowered in. Pluto, like Saturn, is an incredible teacher, and it helps us to see where our life's challenges and lessons are and how can we rise above them. I have Pluto in the 2nd house, and because the 2nd house is related to money and values and worthiness, I struggled for years in my 20s to take any form of financial responsibility. Money would come in as quickly as it went out. So depending on where Pluto is in your natal chart and what other planets it's connected to can be really great indication of what challenge are you going to be presented with in life and what are you willing to do to rise above it. Which brings me to my final piece of the puzzle, which is Chiron. And I have a love for this asteroid. Chiron orbits between Saturn and Uranus. And even if I think of what these two planets represent, Saturn's all about authority and structure. And then Uranus is totally rebellious. And I'm about to write an article for Body and Soul on the final Saturn-Uranus square that we've been navigating over the last couple of years. When these two combine, it's like this push-pull energy of wanting to forge ahead and disrupt the status quo, but feeling tied to the past and wanting to do things properly. So if we think of Chiron in between these two powerhouse planets, and Chiron in Greek mythology is known as a centaur that could heal and teach other people, but wasn't able to heal or teach himself. Chiron is all about unlocking our life's lessons. So if you have limiting beliefs, which we all essentially do, but if they're at the forefront in your life right now, or if there's any challenges that you're being presented with, or you're wanting to explore the shadowy parts of yourself and you've got the right support to help you, then looking towards your Chiron can give you such great insight as to what area of your life is there an opportunity to heal yourself. That's why Chiron on your natal chart looks like a key. Now, I'm not here to force my opinions on you because astrology is explorative. Some astrologers are on the fence about this, whereas Chiron doesn't rule a sign, but there is some strong links to the sign of Virgo. I definitely am in agreement with Virgo being tied to Mercury because there's an element of that analytical, probing, mutable mind. But because Virgo is associated with the 6th house, which rules health, well-being, that's a big part that Chiron plays too. So I hope by walking you through the planets, celestial bodies, and luminaries in astrology, that there could have been something that's piqued your interest today, an area of your life that's currently in the spotlight. I invite you to explore anything you feel pulled towards, because it's Mercury retrograde, of course. There's no right or wrong way of doing astrology. When you trust yourself, you're doing astrology right. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Cosmic Hotline. I'll be back next week for the new moon and Libra babes. And we have a very special guest, which is an expert takeover. I'm going to be introducing you to the cosmic numerologist, which is Jen King. This conversation with her is so profound. She's going to be giving you the cosmic numerology for this particular lunar cycle, and I cannot wait to share more. I'll see you next week.